Sophie Ngata never imagined that a simple delivery on a Tuesday afternoon would change everything. The kind of everything that rewrites a life from the ground up, that exposes the cruelty hidden behind polished surfaces, that proves dignity exists in places money can never reach. She woke up at 5:30 a.m. in her two-room apartment in Otara, South Auckland, the alarm piercing through the thin walls like it did every morning. Liam was still sleeping, his small body curled under the worn duvet, 7 years old, and dreaming of things she couldn't afford to give him. The morning light filtered through the cheap curtains, grey and weak, and Sophie felt the familiar weight settle on her chest. 2 years. 2 years since Daniel disappeared without a word, without child support, without explanation. 2 years of pedaling an average of 20 kilometers a day, her legs burning, her lungs screaming, delivering meals to people who never looked her in the eye. She made about ends $300 on good months when the orders were steady. It was never enough. Support the channel by leaving your like and comment, and let's go to our story. That Tuesday started like any other. Sophie kissed Liam's forehead, left breakfast money with Mrs. Chen downstairs, who watched him after school, and strapped on her helmet. The bike was second-hand, the gears sticky, but it was hers. The streets of Auckland were already alive at 6 a.m., the city waking in waves. By 2:20 p.m., Sophie had completed 11 deliveries. Her uniform was dark with sweat, her hair plastered to her neck, her muscles aching. Then her phone pinged. Urgent order, executive lunch, Sinclair Tech Solutions, Wynyard Quarter, 15th floor. The pay was double. She needed it. She pedaled hard through the afternoon sun, the heat radiating off the pavement, weaving through traffic with practiced precision. Wynyard Quarter. Glass towers reflecting the harbour, expensive cars lining the streets, people in tailored suits walking with purpose. Sophie felt small. She always felt small here. The lobby of Sinclair Tech Solutions was all marble and chrome, the air conditioning a shock after the heat outside. Sophie approached the reception desk, her reflection in the polished floor making her hyper-aware of her appearance. Sweaty, messy, out of place. 3 employees stood near the desk, mid-conversation, their laughter easy and careless. Olivia Harper, the HR manager, blonde and sharp in a cream blazer. Mark Wilson, commercial coordinator, leaning against the desk with his arms crossed. Josh Bennett, analyst, phone already in his hand. They looked like they belonged. Sophie cleared her throat politely. "Good afternoon. Delivery for Mr. Ethan Sinclair." Olivia turned, her eyes scanning Sophie from head to toe. A smile that wasn't quite a smile. "Oh my God, the smell of sweat," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Mark laughed, a short bark. "People like that shouldn't even come in here. Use the service elevator." Josh was already taking a photo, not even trying to hide it. Posting this in the group chat. Delivery arriving at the office. Sophie felt her throat tighten, her eyes burn. She bit her lip, hard. She would not cry here. She would not give them the satisfaction. She held the bag steady, kept her voice calm. "Where should I leave this?" But they weren't listening anymore. Already back to their conversation, dismissing her like she was invisible. What they didn't see was Ethan Sinclair standing in the side corridor, watching. He had come down to retrieve documents from the legal department, and he saw everything. The mocking tone, the photo, the way Sophie held herself together, even as her hands trembled slightly. Ethan was 41 years old, CEO and founder of a company that grossed about $26 million a year, and in that moment he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Rage. Cold, precise rage. He walked toward the reception with measured steps, his footsteps echoing on the marble. "You three. My office. Now." His voice was low, but it cut through the space like a blade. Olivia's face paled. Mark straightened immediately. Josh fumbled with his phone. Ethan turned to Sophie, his expression softening just slightly. "Thank you for the delivery. Please, come with me as well." Sophie's heart hammered. She didn't understand what was happening. She followed him to the elevator, the 3 employees trailing behind in silence. The ride up was excruciating. Nobody spoke. The air was thick with tension. The meeting room on the 15th floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Waitemata harbor. The water sparkled in the afternoon light, ferries cutting white trails across the blue. Ethan called in 5 directors, his voice clipped and professional. They filed in, confused, curious. Sophie stood near the door, still holding the delivery bag, wishing she could disappear. Ethan didn't waste time. "Olivia, Mark, Josh, you're fired, effective immediately. You have 30 minutes to collect your belongings." The room went silent. Olivia's mouth opened. "But sir, it was just a joke." "It wasn't a joke," Ethan interrupted, his voice ice. "It was gratuitous humiliation of a professional who works under sun and rain to support her family. My father was a delivery driver and a courier for many years. I know exactly what she faces on the streets. And in my company, we do not tolerate disrespect toward any worker, regardless of their role." Mark tried to speak, but Ethan held up a hand. "Security will escort you out. This is non-negotiable." The 3 of them left, shell-shocked, and the directors followed, whispering among themselves. Sophie stood frozen. She didn't know where to put her hands. Ethan turned to her, and his expression was different now. Tired, sincere. "Ms. Sophie, correct? I'd like to apologize on behalf of the company, and I'd like to make you a proposal." Sophie blinked. Her mind was racing. "A proposal?" Ethan gestured to a chair. "Please sit." She sat, feeling the expensive leather beneath her, feeling completely out of place. Ethan sat across from her, not at the head of the table, but right across, like they were equals. What just happened was unacceptable, and it's not the first time I've heard stories like this in corporate environments, but it's the first time I've witnessed it myself. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'd like to offer you a position here. A proper position. Administrative assistant and $5,200 a month, health plan, Kiwi Saver contributions, meal allowances, full benefits." Sophie stared at him. The number was staggering, more than she made in 2 months peddling, but something in her chest tightened. "Why?" Her voice came out sharper than she intended. "Why are you doing this? Pity? Guilt? I don't want to be some rich businessman's social project to clear your conscience." Ethan leaned back, surprised by her bluntness. And then, for the first time in a long time, he smiled. A real smile. "Not pity, recognition. You pedal 20 kilometers a day, maintain professionalism even when you're disrespected, raise a child alone. That's merit. You deserve an opportunity." Sophie wanted to believe him, but life had taught her to be cautious. "I need to think about it." Ethan nodded. "Of course. Take your time." But Sophie was already standing, already leaving, the delivery bag forgotten on the table. That night, Sophie couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark of her small bedroom, listening to Liam's soft breathing from the other room, replaying the day over and over. The humiliation, the rage in Ethan Sinclair's eyes, the offer. It was too much, too sudden, too good to be true. She had learned the hard way that when things seemed too good, there was always a catch. By morning, the story had leaked. Someone had filmed the confrontation in the office, posted it online. Within hours, it was everywhere. CEO fires 3 employees for mocking delivery worker. Millionaire defends bicycle courier. The comments were a mix of praise and suspicion. Some called Ethan a hero. Others said it was a publicity stunt. And then the media found Sophie. Reporters showed up at her apartment. Her phone rang non-stop. Messages flooded in. Strangers on social media dissected her life, her choices, her appearance. "She's being used for marketing. This is just performative wokeness. She should be grateful." Sophie felt trapped. The offer that had seemed like a lifeline now felt like a cage. She hadn't asked for this attention. She hadn't asked to be turned into a viral story. She just wanted to work, to provide for Liam, to maintain her dignity. Ethan, meanwhile, was facing his own storm. His mother called, worried about the company's image. His 2 brothers questioned his emotional decisions. The board of directors scheduled an emergency meeting concerned about impulsive actions affecting company reputation. Even his ex-wife texted, her message dripping with condescension. "Still playing hero, I see." Ethan sat in his penthouse in Parnell, the Auckland skyline spread out before him through floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and white. The view was worth millions. He felt nothing. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages from the PR team, lawyers, board members. Everyone had an opinion, everyone had a strategy, but nobody asked him why he'd done it. Nobody asked if he was okay. The truth was, he wasn't sure himself. When he'd seen Sophie standing in that lobby, shoulders squared despite the mockery, something had cracked open in him. A memory. His father, Tama Sinclair, coming home at midnight smelling of exhaust and sweat, collapsing on the couch too tired to eat. His mother, Aroha, scrubbing floors in wealthy homes, her hands raw and red. They'd worked themselves to the bone so Ethan could go to university, could have a chance. And he'd taken that chance and built an empire. But somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten what it cost. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be on the other side. 3 days passed. Sophie didn't answer his calls. Ethan didn't push. He deserved her silence. On the 4th day, he made a decision. He drove to Otara, something he'd never done before. The neighborhood was different from Parnell. Houses were smaller, closer together, paint peeling on some facades. Children played in the streets. There was life here, real, messy human life. He found the bakery Mrs. Chen had mentioned in passing during a brief conversation he'd had when trying to reach Sophie. A simple place, the smell of fresh bread, overwhelming, warm. It was 6:15 a.m., and there she was. Sophie, standing at the counter ordering bread, her hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a faded hoodie. She looked younger without the uniform and exhausted. She turned and saw him. Her expression hardened. "What are you doing here?" Ethan held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "I came to apologize." Sophie crossed her arms. "You already did that." "No," Ethan said quietly. "I apologized for them. Now I'm apologizing for me. I offered you a job without really knowing you. I made assumptions. I turned you into a viral story without your permission. That was wrong." Sophie studied him, her dark eyes searching for deception. She found something else. Exhaustion, regret, sincerity. She sighed. "You want to sit?" They sat at a small table by the window, the morning light soft and forgiving. Sophie's bread came, still hot, butter melting into the soft center. She tore a piece, offered half to Ethan. He took it, surprised. It was simple, perfect. "I dropped out of university," Sophie said suddenly. "Pedagogy, 3rd semester. I got pregnant with Liam and Daniel promised we'd figure it out together. Then he left, just left, and I had a choice. I could fall apart, or I could keep going. So I kept going." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly around the bread. "I peddle every day because it's honest work, because I can look my son in the eye and tell him his mother doesn't quit. That's all I have, my dignity. And when you offered me that job, it felt like you were taking that away, like you were saying I couldn't earn it myself." Ethan listened, really listened, not thinking about his response, not planning his words, just listening. When she finished, he spoke quietly. "My father died of a heart attack when he was 54. He was working a 14-hour shift, delivering packages in the rain. My mother found out when the hospital called. She was cleaning a house in Remuera at the time. She took 3 buses to get to him. He was already gone." He paused, the memory still sharp after all these years. "I built this company from nothing. Scholarships, loans, sleeping in my car for 6 months. I told myself I'd never struggle like my parents did, and I didn't. But I realized something after my divorce 4 years ago. I'd built this successful company, this wealthy life, and I was completely alone. No family, no real friends. Just employees who told me what I wanted to hear. Just an empty apartment and a calendar full of meetings." Sophie's expression softened. She saw it now. The loneliness. The same loneliness she felt, but dressed in expensive suits and living in penthouses. "I don't want to give you a job out of pity," Ethan continued, But I also realize I went about it the wrong way. So here's a different proposal, a real one." He pulled out his phone, showed her a document. "The company is launching a professional development program for app-based delivery workers. Tech skills, management, entrepreneurship, partnership with Auckland University of Technology, full scholarships. We need someone who knows the reality of these workers to coordinate the program. Someone who's lived it. Fair salary, formal contract, zero charity. You'd apply like anyone else. If you're the best candidate, the position is yours. If not, you continue your life. But at least you'll have had the chance." Sophie looked at the document, reading carefully. The program was real, comprehensive, well-funded. This wasn't a pity job. This was a real position. "And if I get it, I walk through the front door as a professional." "Exactly," Ethan said. For the first time, Sophie smiled at him, genuinely. "I'll think about it." The next 2 weeks were a blur. Sophie applied for the position, going through the full recruitment process. There were 40 other candidates, many with more formal education than her. But Sophie had something they didn't. She knew what it was like to pedal through rain at midnight to make an extra $20. She knew what it was like to calculate if she could afford to buy bread and milk in the same week. She knew the fear, the exhaustion, the small victories. Her interview was honest, raw, and utterly compelling. She didn't try to sound corporate. She just spoke the truth. 3 weeks after that morning in the bakery, Ethan's HR director called. "Ms. Ngata, we'd like to offer you the position of program coordinator." Sophie's knees went weak. She sat down hard on her apartment floor, Liam looking at her with concern. "Mum!" She pulled him into a hug, tears streaming down her face. "We're going to be okay, baby. We're going to be okay." Her first day at Sinclair Tech Solutions, Sophie walked through the front entrance, head high, wearing a simple blazer she'd bought second-hand but tailored to fit perfectly. Employees watched her, some with curiosity, some with residual judgment. She didn't care. She'd earned this. Ethan was waiting by the elevator. "Welcome to the team, Ms. Ngata." "Thank you, Mr. Sinclair." They shook hands, professional and appropriate. But there was something else there. A connection. A mutual respect born from shared understanding. Over the next months, Sophie threw herself into the work. She built a curriculum with input from actual delivery workers, partnered with community organizations in South Auckland, created pathways for people who'd been told they weren't good enough. The program launched with 50 participants. Within 3 months, 200 workers had enrolled. Success stories poured in. A single father who learned coding and got hired as a junior developer. A grandmother who started her own meal delivery business. People who'd been invisible suddenly had opportunities. Ethan watched Sophie work with something close to awe. She was relentless, compassionate, brilliant. She didn't just coordinate a program, she changed lives. And somewhere along the way, he realized he was looking forward to their weekly progress meetings more than anything else in his schedule. Not because of the program metrics, because of her. The way she laughed when she told stories about participants, the way she fought fiercely for funding, the way she never, ever compromised her integrity. He started finding excuses to work late when she worked late, to grab coffee when she grabbed coffee, to ask her opinion on things that had nothing to do with the program. Sophie noticed. She wasn't sure what to do with it. Ethan Sinclair was her boss, technically. He was wealthy beyond her comprehension. He was from a different world. But when they talked, those differences seemed to fade. They talked about their parents, their struggles, their dreams. They talked about Liam, who Ethan met one afternoon when Sophie had to bring him to the office during a school holiday. Liam was fascinated by the technology, asking questions with unself-conscious curiosity. Ethan answered every single one, getting down on the boy's level, treating him with genuine interest. Sophie watched them together and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Hope. It was a Friday evening, 6 months after Sophie started at Sinclair Tech Solutions, when everything shifted. The office had emptied out, most employees eager to start their weekends. Sophie was reviewing applications for the next round of scholarships, her desk lamp creating a small pool of light in the darkening office. Ethan knocked on her open door. "You're still here." She looked up, surprised. "Could say the same about you," he smiled, that genuine smile she'd come to recognize. "Want to grab dinner? There's a fish and chips place in Otara that Mrs. Chen keeps telling me about. Apparently I'm not a real Aucklander until I've tried it." Sophie laughed. "You want to go to Otara for fish and chips? I want to go wherever you'd actually enjoy eating, not some fancy restaurant where you'd feel uncomfortable." The honesty of it disarmed her. "Okay, let's go." They drove in Ethan's car, a Tesla that felt absurdly out of place in her neighborhood, but he didn't seem to notice or care. The fish and chip shop was a local institution, fluorescent lights and plastic chairs, the smell of hot oil and salt overwhelming. Everyone knew Sophie here. Mrs. Parata working the counter, Tommy and his mates at the corner table, kids from the primary school sharing a single order of chips. "Sophie!" Mrs. Parata called out. "The usual. Please." And Ethan, Sophie glanced at Ethan. "Same for my friend." Friend. The word felt inadequate but safe. They sat by the window, and within minutes their order arrived. Paper-wrapped parcels of golden battered fish, thick-cut chips glistening with salt and vinegar. Ethan took a bite and his eyes widened. "This is incredible." Sophie grinned. "Told you. Best in Auckland." They ate with their hands, grease on their fingers, talking about nothing and everything. Liam's upcoming school play, Ethan's disastrous attempt at learning to surf, the latest program participant who'd just gotten accepted to university. The conversation flowed easily, naturally. And then Ethan said something that changed the tone. "I haven't felt this relaxed in years." Sophie looked at him, really looked, saw the lines of stress around his eyes had softened, saw the way he held himself differently here, less guarded. "Why not?" "Because everywhere else I have to be Ethan Sinclair, CEO. The guy with all the answers, the guy who has it all together. Here I'm just a guy eating fish and chips." He paused. "With someone who sees me. Not the company, not the money, just me." Sophie's breath caught. The admission was raw, vulnerable. She should pull back, keep it professional, but she didn't want to. "I see you," she said quietly. The air between them thickened, charged. Ethan reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers, giving her the choice. Sophie's heart hammered. This was dangerous. This could complicate everything. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something she recognized. Loneliness, hope, the terrifying possibility of connection. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid. They sat like that for a long moment, the noise of the shop fading into background. "Sophie, Ethan started, but his phone buzzed loudly on the table. He glanced at it, frowned. "I'm sorry, it's the board chair. I need to take this." He stepped outside, still visible through the window, his posture tensing immediately as he talked. Sophie watched him transform back into CEO mode, shoulders straightening, expression hardening. The distance between their worlds suddenly felt vast again. When he came back, the moment had passed. "Everything okay?" Sophie asked. "Yeah, just bored politics." But his tone had shifted, careful, and Sophie felt the walls go back up. They finished eating in near silence. The ease from earlier evaporated. Ethan drove her home, the car filled with unspoken words. "Thank you for tonight," he said when they arrived at her building. "It was..." "Yeah," Sophie said, understanding what he couldn't articulate. "It was!" She got out of the car and he drove away, and Sophie stood on the sidewalk feeling like she'd just lost something she never had to begin with. The following weeks were awkward. Ethan was polite but distant in their meetings. Sophie matched his energy, keeping everything professional. But the tension was there, humming beneath every interaction. Other people started to notice. Whispers in the break room, speculative glances. And then the article came out, a business magazine piece about Sinclair Tech Solutions community program. It was mostly positive, highlighting the success stories, the innovative approach. But there was a paragraph near the end that made Sophie's blood run cold. Sources suggest that program coordinator Sophie Ngata, the viral delivery worker from earlier this year, may have a personal relationship with CEO Ethan Sinclair, raising questions about the true nature of her hiring and the program's objectivity. Sophie read it 3 times, her hands shaking. She'd worked so hard to prove herself, to show she'd earned her position, and now everyone would think it was because of some romantic involvement. She marched to Ethan's office, not bothering to knock. He looked up, startled. "Sophie, did you see the article?" Her voice was tight, with barely controlled fury. "I did. It's baseless speculation. We'll release a statement." "A statement won't fix this." Sophie's voice cracked. "Do you know what people will think? That I slept my way into this job? That everything I've built is fake? That I'm just another poor woman using a rich man?" Ethan stood, coming around his desk. "Nobody who knows you would think that." "You live in a different world," Sophie said bitterly. "In your world, reputation is inconvenient. In mine, it's everything. It's the difference between being respected and being pitied, between being seen as competent and being seen as a charity case." "That's not fair," Ethan said quietly. "Isn't it?" Sophie's eyes burned with unshed tears. "You fired 3 people to defend me. You created a program and hired me to run it. You show up at fish and chips places in my neighborhood. And yes, maybe all of that was genuine. Maybe you really do respect me. But from the outside, it looks like exactly what that article suggests. A rich man playing savior to a poor woman. And Her voice broke. "I can't do this." Ethan's face paled. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I should never have taken this job. I should never have let myself think." She stopped, took a breath. "I'm resigning." "No." Ethan's voice was sharp. "You can't. The program needs you. Those workers need you. They need the program. They don't need me specifically. You can hire someone else. Someone whose entire professional credibility won't be questioned because of who they know." Sophie turned to leave, but Ethan caught her arm gently. "Sophie, please, don't let them take this from you. You've earned everything you have here." She looked at him, and for a moment she wanted to believe him, but then she pulled away. "I'm sorry, Ethan, but I can't risk my integrity. Not for anything, not even for—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Sophie walked out of Sinclair Tech Solutions that afternoon and didn't look back. She submitted her formal resignation via email, effective immediately. She blocked Ethan's number. She stopped reading the news. She went back to her bike, back to the streets, back to the familiar rhythm of deliveries. It hurt less than she expected, or maybe it hurt so much she'd gone numb. Liam noticed. "Why don't we see Uncle Ethan anymore?" he asked one night at dinner. Sophie forced a smile. "He's just busy with work, baby." "Did you have a fight?" The perceptiveness of children. "Something like that." "You should say sorry," Liam said seriously. "That's what you always tell me to do when I fight with Jake." "Grown up, but it's if you miss someone, you tell them. That's what friends—" Meanwhile, he tried to continue as normal, but nothing felt right. The program continued under interim management, but it lacked Sophie's vision, her passion. The office felt hollow. He threw himself into work, stayed late every night, took on more projects. His mother called, concerned. "You look terrible, son." "I'm fine." "You're not. What happened with that woman, Sophie?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Nothing happened. That's the problem." His mother, sharp as ever, saw right through him. "You fell in love with her. It wasn't a question. It doesn't matter. She's gone. She made her choice." "Oh, did she? Or did she make the choice she thought she had to make to protect herself?" His mother's voice was gentle. "You know what that's like, Ethan. Your father and I faced it too. People thought I was with him for the wrong reasons when he started making money. They didn't see the years we struggled together. They just saw the end result. What did you do? We proved them wrong. Not with words, with time, with consistency, with showing up over and over until the truth became undeniable." Ethan sat with that conversation for days, and then he made a decision. Ethan didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up at her apartment with grand gestures. Instead, he did something unexpected. He stepped back from the company. Not completely, but significantly. He promoted his COO to handle day-to-day operations, restructured his schedule to work reasonable hours, and started volunteering. Not at high-profile charity galas where his photo would end up in society pages. At the Auckland City Mission, serving meals to homeless families. At a community centre in Mangere, teaching basic business skills to aspiring entrepreneurs. At the same fish and chips shop in Otara, where he became a regular, just another customer sharing tables with locals. Mrs. Parata noticed. "You're that CEO fellow, aren't you? Sophie's friend." "I hope so," Ethan said quietly. "She won't talk to you?" Mrs. Parata asked with the bluntness of someone who'd seen too much life to bother with subtlety. "She thinks I see her as a project, as something to fix." "And do you?" Ethan met her eyes. "No, I see her as someone who saved me without even trying, who showed me what I'd lost, who made me remember why I built the company in the first place, not for money, for purpose." Mrs. Parata studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "She comes in every Saturday morning with her boy, around 9. Just so you know, it wasn't permission, but it was information. That Saturday, Ethan was there at 8:45. He ordered fish and chips, sat at the corner table, tried not to watch the door. At 9:07, Sophie walked in with Liam. The boy saw him first. "Uncle Ethan!" Liam's face lit up and he ran over before Sophie could stop him. Ethan's heart clenched. He'd missed this kid. "Hey mate, how's school?" "Good. I'm playing a tree in the play. Mum made my costume." Liam beamed. Sophie had reached them now, her expression guarded. "Liam, go order for us, please." She handed him money and the boy reluctantly went to the counter, glancing back every few seconds. Sophie sat down across from Ethan, her posture stiff. "What are you doing here?" "Eating breakfast," Ethan said simply. "This is my neighborhood, Ethan." "I know. Mrs. Parata makes the best fish and chips in Auckland. That's not a crime, is it?" Sophie's eyes narrowed. "Don't play games." "I'm not." Ethan leaned forward, his voice low and sincere. "I'm not here to pressure you. I'm not here to make some grand gesture. I'm here because this is a good place with good people, and I like being here. If that makes you uncomfortable, I'll leave. But Sophie, I'm not going to disappear from your neighborhood just because you're afraid of what people might think." The directness of it caught her off guard. "You don't understand what it's like," Sophie said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "You're right, I don't. Not completely. But I understand what it's like to have people make assumptions about you based on where you came from. I understand what it's like to feel like you have to prove yourself over and over." He paused. "And I understand what it's like to push away something good because you're scared it's too good to be real." Sophie's throat tightened. Liam came back with their order, sitting next to Ethan like it was the most natural thing in the world, chattering about his week. Ethan listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at the boys' stories. Sophie watched them together, something painful and warm unfurling in her chest. This man, this wealthy CEO, sitting in a cheap fish and chip shop, giving her 7-year-old his full attention, not performing, not proving a point, just being present. When Liam got distracted by a friend across the shop, Sophie spoke quietly. "Why did you really step back from the company?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Because I realized I'd built a prison, a very comfortable, very expensive prison, and you showed me what freedom looked like. Not having money or not having it, but having purpose, having connection, having a reason to wake up that matters beyond profit margins." He met her eyes. "I don't want to save you, Sophie. I want to learn from you. I want to be the kind of person who sees value in people, not just potential, the way you do." Sophie felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. "The article." "Screw the article," Ethan said with quiet intensity. "Screw what anyone thinks. I know what's true. You know what's true. Everyone who worked with you knows what's true. You built that program with your own vision, your own work, your own integrity. Nothing I did or didn't do changes that. But people will always wonder." "Let them wonder," Ethan interrupted gently. "The people whose opinions actually matter won't. And the ones who choose to believe gossip over evidence, they don't deserve your energy." Sophie was quiet for a long moment, watching Liam laugh with his friend. watching the morning light stream through the shop window, watching Ethan sitting there with grease on his fingers and hope in his eyes. I was scared, she admitted finally. Of what? Of this. Of you. Of feeling something real and having it be taken away again. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. I can survive being poor, Ethan. I've done it my whole life, but I don't know if I can survive hoping for something better and losing it. That might actually break me. Ethan's hand moved across the table slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. He took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. I can't promise I won't mess up. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I can promise I won't run. I can promise I'll show up every day in whatever way you need. Not as someone trying to fix your life, as someone who wants to build a life with you, if you'll let me. Sophie looked at their joined hands, calloused fingers, hers from bike handlebars, his from years of writing and typing and building, different paths to the same place. She thought about running again, about playing it safe, about protecting herself. And then she thought about what she told Liam every time he was afraid to try something new. We don't grow in our comfort zones, baby. She took a shaky breath. Okay. Ethan's eyes widened. Okay. But we do this slow. We do this right. No grand gestures, no media attention, just us, figuring it out. A smile broke across Ethan's face, genuine and bright and devastating. Slow, right, I can do that. Liam chose that moment to return, sliding into the booth with perfect timing. Are you guys friends again? Sophie looked at Ethan, saw the warmth in his eyes, felt something settle in her chest. Yeah, baby, we're friends again. Good, Liam said seriously, because Uncle Ethan promised to come to my play and I already saved him a seat. Ethan laughed. Wouldn't miss it for anything. The next months were careful, tentative. Ethan came to Liam's play, sitting in the middle row with all the other parents, clapping enthusiastically when the trees took their bow. Sophie started consulting part-time for the program at Sinclair Tech, working remotely so there could be no accusations of impropriety. They had dinner every Friday at the fish and chips shop, same table, same order. Sometimes they talked about deep things. Sometimes they just existed in comfortable silence. Ethan met Sophie's small circle of friends, people from the neighborhood who'd known her for years. They were wary at first, protective, but Ethan didn't try to impress them. He just showed up, helped Tommy fix his car one Saturday, brought Mrs. Parata's grandson school supplies without being asked, played football with the local kids in the park. Slowly, painstakingly, he proved he wasn't temporary. He was permanent. Sophie, in turn, entered Ethan's world. Not the corporate world, but his real world. She met his mother, Aroha, a fierce woman in her 70s, who looked Sophie up and down and then pulled her into a hug. My boy talks about you constantly. About your work, about your son, about how you make him laugh. Aroha's eyes were knowing. He's different now, lighter. That's your doing. Sophie met his brothers, who were more skeptical but ultimately came around when they saw how Ethan was with Liam. Patient, present, playful. Haven't seen him like this in years, the younger brother admitted. Not since before the divorce. Maybe not even then. There were still difficult moments. Board members who made subtle comments. Neighbors who whispered. Sophie's own doubts that crept in during the vulnerable hours of early morning. But every time the doubt came, Ethan was there. Not fixing, just being there. 9 months after that Saturday morning at the fish and chip shop, Sophie received a phone call that changed everything. Mrs. Chen's voice was panicked on the other end. Sophie, it's Liam. He fell at school. They've taken him to Starship Hospital. Head injury. Sophie's world tilted. She was across town doing a delivery consultation, 40 minutes away in traffic. Her hands shook as she tried to call for a taxi, her mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. Sophie, I heard. I'm 10 minutes from Starship. I'm going there now. How did you... Mrs. Chen called me. She has my number for emergencies. I'm already on my way. Sophie's throat closed. Ethan, I'll stay with him until you get there. He won't be alone, I promise. The call ended. Sophie sat in the taxi, tears streaming down her face, terror and gratitude warring in her chest. This man, who owed her nothing, who had his own life and responsibilities, was dropping everything to be with her son. When Sophie burst through the emergency room doors 35 minutes later, she found them immediately. Ethan was sitting in a plastic chair, Liam curled against his side, a bandage on the boy's forehead. Ethan was reading to him from a phone, some story about dragons, his voice calm and steady. Liam saw her first. "Mum!" Sophie crashed to her knees in front of him, hands frantically checking him over. "Baby, are you okay? What happened?" "I fell off the monkey bars," Liam said, wincing. "But Uncle Ethan came. He told them he was family, so they'd let him stay with me. And he got me ice cream from the cafe, even though the nurse said I shouldn't have sugar. But he said emotional trauma overrides nutritional guidelines. Despite everything." Sophie laughed through her tears. She looked up at Ethan, who was watching her with such tenderness. "It hurt. Thank you," she whispered. "Always," he said simply. The doctor came then, explaining that Liam had a mild concussion, but would be fine. Observation for 24 hours, then home. Relief crashed over Sophie so hard she swayed. Ethan's hand steadied her, warm and solid at her back. That night, while Liam slept in the hospital bed, Sophie and Ethan sat in the uncomfortable chairs, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. "You didn't have to come," Sophie said quietly. "Yes, I did." Ethan's voice was firm. "That little boy in there, he's important to you, which makes him important to me. And honestly, Sophie, he's important to me all on his own. I love that kid." Sophie's breath caught. Ethan continued, his words careful but honest. "I know we said slow, I know we said careful, and I'm not asking you to change that, but I need you to know, this isn't casual for me. You aren't casual. Liam isn't casual. When Mrs. Chen called, I didn't think. I just moved, because that's what you do for family, and whether you're ready to call it that or not, that's what you are to me. Family." Sophie felt something break open in her chest. All the fear, all the protection, all the walls she'd built so carefully, they crumbled. "I love you," she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. "I've been terrified to say it, terrified to feel it, but I do. I love you." Ethan's eyes shone with unshed tears. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away the wetness on her cheek. "I love you too. So much it scares me. So much I don't know what to do with it except show up and hope that's enough." "It's enough," Sophie whispered. "It's more than enough." He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Liam's sleepy voice came from the bed. "Finally. I've been waiting forever for you guys to kiss." They both laughed, caught. Sophie went to his bedside, smoothing his hair. "You're supposed to be asleep, troublemaker." "I was, but then I woke up and you were being all mushy." Liam grinned, then winced at the movement. "Does this mean Uncle Ethan is going to be around all the time now?" Sophie glanced at Ethan, who'd come to stand beside her. "Would that be okay with you?" she asked her son. "Yeah," Liam said, his eyes already drifting shut again. "He's good at bedtime stories, and he promised to teach me to code. And he makes you smile, Mum. You smile a lot more now." Out of the mouths of babes again. Sophie felt Ethan's hand slip into hers, their fingers interlacing naturally. They stood there together watching Liam sleep, and Sophie thought about how strange life was, how you could be pedaling your bike through the streets, exhausted and hopeless, and then suddenly everything changes. Not because someone saved you, but because someone saw you. The months that followed weren't perfect. Ethan's ex-wife caused problems, trying to use his relationship with Sophie as ammunition in disputes over asset division. Some of Sophie's friends drifted away, uncomfortable with the changes in her life. Board members at Sinclair Tech continued to whisper, but Ethan and Sophie faced it together. When the media tried to do another piece about their unlikely romance, they declined interviews. When well-meaning people asked Sophie if she was intimidated by Ethan's wealth, she said simply, "I'm not dating his bank account. I'm dating him." When people asked Ethan what attracted him to Sophie, he said, "She reminds me what matters." The program for delivery workers expanded to 3 other cities. Sophie was hired as the national director, a position she earned through a competitive process with external candidates. Nobody could question her credentials now. She had the results to prove her worth. Ethan reduced his work hours permanently, creating space for life beyond business. He attended Liam's football games, helped with homework, learned to cook Sophie's favorite meals with varying degrees of success. 1 year after Liam's accident, on a Saturday morning, the three of them were at the fish and chip shop. Their usual table, their usual order. Liam was colouring in a workbook, tongue poking out in concentration. Sophie was reviewing scholarship applications on her laptop. Ethan was reading the news on his phone. Completely ordinary, completely perfect. Mrs. Parata brought over their food with a knowing smile. "You three, every Saturday like clockwork. It's nice. Stability." After she left, Liam looked up. "Are we a family now?" The question was innocent, but it carried weight. Sophie and Ethan exchanged a glance. They'd talked about this, about what they were building, about the future, but they'd agreed to let it unfold naturally. Ethan spoke first. "What do you think? Do we feel like a family?" Liam considered this seriously. "Yeah, because families are people who show up, who take care of each other, who eat fish and chips together, even when they could eat fancy food." He looked at Ethan. "You show up. So yeah, we're a family." Sophie's eyes filled with tears, happy ones this time. Ethan reached across the table, taking both her hand and Liam's. "Then yes, we're a family." There was no proposal, no grand gesture, no performance. Just three people in a fish and chip shop, holding hands across a table, choosing each other. That evening, as they walked through the neighborhood, Liam ran ahead with other kids from the street. Sophie leaned into Ethan's side, his arm around her shoulders. The Auckland sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the air warm and alive with the sounds of families finishing their day. "Are you happy?" Ethan asked quietly. Sophie thought about it, really thought. 2 years ago, she'd been alone, exhausted, terrified. 1 year ago, she'd been running from this, convinced it couldn't be real. Now, "Yeah," she said, looking up at him. "I really am." "Me too." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for taking a chance on me." "Thank you for showing up," Sophie replied. "For keeping showing up." They watched Liam play, his laughter carrying on the evening air, and Sophie understood something fundamental. Wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts or property values. It was measured in moments like this, in a boy who felt safe enough to play, in a partner who chose presence over prestige, in a community that accepted you as you were, in fish and chips shared on Saturday mornings, in hands held across tables, in showing up over and over until showing up became home. And there, on that street in Otara, with the Auckland skyline visible in the distance and the smell of someone's dinner cooking nearby, Sophie Ngata knew that she had everything that truly mattered. Not because a millionaire had rescued her, but because two broken people had chosen to heal together, had chosen to build something real from honest foundations, had chosen love over fear, presence over performance, authenticity over appearances. She still pedaled her bike sometimes, on weekends, not for work but for joy, a reminder of where she'd come from, of what she'd survived, of the strength that had carried her through. Ethan joined her sometimes, his expensive bike looking ridiculous next to her second-hand one, but he never complained, just pedaled beside her, matching her pace, being present. Liam called them his weird bike parents, with affection. The program continued to grow, changing lives, creating opportunities, proving that investment in people always paid dividends. Sophie's work was featured in international case studies. Ethan's company became known not just for profit, but for purpose. But none of that mattered as much as the small moments. Breakfast together before school, bedtime stories that Ethan made up as he went, increasingly ridiculous. Liam's artwork covering their refrigerator, the same refrigerator in Sophie's small apartment because they'd decided not to rush into moving in together, to let things unfold at their own pace. Sunday mornings at the park, Wednesday night dinners at Aroha's house. The ordinary, extraordinary rhythm of a life built on mutual respect, genuine love, and the courage to be vulnerable. And in that fish and chip shop every Saturday morning, at their usual table, with Mrs. Parata bringing their usual order, Sophie, Ethan and Liam proved something important. That dignity has no price tag, that love crosses every barrier, that family is who shows up. That true wealth is presence, connection, and the courage to choose each other over and over in 1,000 small ways that add up to forever. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real, yeah.